Hello, hello. I hope y'all are well today. Today we're going to discuss this topic of the trickster, the clown, the jester, and the Nephilim, and how this is all connected to one particular archetype, but they manifest in different ways. So I hope that you're well wherever you're at. And I kind of want to discuss like how the trickster and the Nephilim can show up in film in particular. So let's see. Well, first of all, let's talk about the trickster, okay? So the trickster is usually somebody who, if you've ever encountered a trickster archetype, right? You can't beat them, okay? If you've tried to go toe to toe with the trickster, good luck, because you're playing the game wrong. If you're trying to go against the trickster archetype, you've already, quote, lost, okay? Because the trickster is a master of polarity. They don't play by the rules of justice, okay? So if you're trying to beat a trickster or win against a trickster, they're always going to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps ahead of you, okay? And the reason why they are going to be able to do this is because they're going to be able to be masters of both the dark and the light. And because of that, you know, a lot of times if we're focusing on a world more binary code, right? It's either this or it's that. It's black or it's white, like that sort of stuff. The trickster actually masters both black and white, okay? So I'm actually have a little bit of a, this is a little friend I brought to today's live, okay? This is kind of the energy of the Nephilim, okay? You notice how there's like black and white with this, okay? And if you think about the chessboard, all right, the game board, you have black and white. And the person who usually is able to be the most powerful player in chess is able to move all across the game board, okay? They are able to move both through the black and through the white, okay? But let's discuss the Nephilim, okay? Because the Nephilim has a lot to do with this. And if you have heard about the Nephilim, you've probably heard different types of stories about them. A lot of times the Bible will refer to the Nephilim as being evil or being fallen. A lot of times you hear this energy of fallen, you know, like the Nephilim had this big fall from grace, and their fallen state is now their punishment, okay? But the Nephilim has these colors. They have both the black and the white. So let's discuss and let's try to decode how Nephilim shows up in the simulation and how it has to do with this trickster archetype. So I'm gonna give you a quick story about the Nephilim. I've told this a couple of times. You know, the Nephilim, outside of being like a part of more of like a fallen biblical narrative, the Nephilim in Native American type mythologies and pantheons, the Nephilim was the protector of the village in a lot of ways. The Nephilim had the ability to absorb the energies of evil, quote unquote, by becoming the energies of evil. And this is representative of the black and white that the Nephilim also have, okay? So what they were able to do is if there was like, let's say there was a big storm coming, right? And in these times, you know, a lot of these tribes believed in this concept of animism, that everything had life, that everything had consciousness within it, okay? So it wasn't just a storm or a hurricane that was coming, it was some kind of an evil force that was going to wreak havoc upon the village. Well, what the Nephilim would do would be to actually dress up as the force or the force of evil and mirror that force of evil. So we have to also think about mirrors as it relates to the Nephilim in particular. Actually, all of this, trickster, jester, Nephilim, they all work within the realm of mirrors. So if you encounter these archetypes, nothing is as it seems because you are in a mirrored realm. It's kind of like if you are at a carnival fun house. I don't know if y'all have ever been in one of those things where you're in this like carnival fun house and you're navigating this realm of mirrors, okay? And in some of the mirrors you look really fat, and in some of the mirrors you look really skinny, and others you look really tall. Nothing is quite as it seems, okay? So this is the realm of the trickster, the jester, and the Nephilim, okay? And it comes a lot from these ancient indigenous pantheons where the Nephilim could become all things and could mirror any force to negate the force. Because if you are able to become the energy that's opposing you or quote attacking you, then it's no longer an attack. You actually become one with that energy and you can nullify this energy, okay? That's one story of the Nephilim. But then there's this other like biblical story that says that the Nephilim did evil and the Nephilim fell from grace. And the Nephilim are never supposed to, quote, ascend or maybe have certain access to things because of that fall from grace. So in a lot of Abrahamic religions, you will, particularly in the Bible, you will see different biblical verses. And then they talk about this a lot in like the book of Enoch, for example, about why the Nephilim are unable to ascend. Okay, why the Nephilim are fallen. There's like a lot of justification for this. And, you know, there are these murmurings that there are Nephilim that are in the underworld and they're not able to ascend out of the underworld, okay? Some people could be attached to certain Nephilim lineages where you might have a particular bloodline that you're a part of that is never supposed to, quote, ascend, okay? And we also kind of want to decode what that means. What does it actually even mean to ascend, you know, in the simulation? But it's possible that maybe there's a connection with the lineages of the Nephilim from the Native American times and these, quote, fallen lineages. There's actually like a YouTuber right now that talks about the Nephilim and the Nephilim's association with clowns. And I think he actually has a book out. I forgot his name, but he has like a book out that's called The Nephilim Look Like Clowns or something like that. And he basically talks about the interrelatedness of the Nephilim and clowns and how this has permeated through our society. But he makes the analogy that a lot of these like secret societies are more of Nephilim lineages. But if that would be true, then would they be fallen? Like, what does it mean to be fallen? Because if you are running things in society, right? If you're in the background, are you the fallen ones or are you ascended in the simulation? So this is where things get really hairy, because up is down, black is white. Nothing is as it seems. You could think that certain beings are fallen or are acting in a fallen state, but in another way they're ascended. Maybe they have full root permissions to do exactly what they will. This is the inversion of justice. Okay, there's always going to be an inversion of justice when you are navigating the energies of the trickster, when you are navigating the energies of the Nephilim or the jester, for better or for worse. This could go for these archetypes. You know, these archetypes might be able to do whatever they want, right? Without, quote, justice being served. They might be able to avoid justice. But on the flip side, because everything is within the realm of mirrors, it could be an inversion. It could be that these beings are always getting penalized, or maybe they're taking on the karma of others, or maybe no justice is found for them and they always feel like justice is being used as an anchor without reason or cause. Okay, so this is when we enter the realm of mirrors. Up is down, black is white. Okay, it's scary. It can be scary. There's like a weird energy to it. You know, I've been researching this energy of the jester, okay, in particular. I've been doing it for a while. But I've been learning that there's actually people who take DMT or like ayahuasca who will encounter the realms of the jesters. I've never taken that substance before, but you don't have to. This isn't just something that you will encounter if you are taking psychedelic substances, especially if you have been having like a very deep dreaming practice, or a deep meditation practice, or a lot of times the subliminals can take you into certain realms as well. You won't necessarily need the intermediary of a psychedelic substance to activate these sorts of energies. Okay, I've encountered these energies a few times, and depending upon my state of consciousness, frequency change of brain functions. Yeah, it can definitely, sound is a way to create the architecture of your world, and so you can actually have some very like realm shifting experiences through the power of sound. So yeah, I've had experiences with these this realm a few times in different ways, depending upon my consciousness. Sometimes it's been more of like an adversarial way, but even when it was helping me to see a quote injustice in the simulation. So I shared this story on my Patreon last year, on the genetic path cutter tier. I'm going to share it like really briefly. So this is when I was like really deep into being like more of a light worker. Okay. I was like, okay, I'm a star seed. I want to ascend. I was going really heavy into the ascension stuff, but I was also learning about this concept of karmic transference. I was also learning about this concept of, oh, I might be clearing karma that's not quote unquote mine. It might just be being deferred onto me. So I was like still doing more of the ascension light work stuff, but I was also learning more about like the injustice, quote unquote, of the simulation. Okay. And I was utilizing the ascension materials of a website called Aligning with Earth, which I've shared a few times. And it's a pretty interesting website that has a lot of good resources, and they do a really good job of talking about this concept of karmic transference and how sometimes you could be ascending, but you might be taking on the karma of other lineages. And so one of the practices was to go to a place called the gold and silver planes of karma transmutation, because I was really big on like, okay, I believed in karma. I don't believe in it anymore. Because I see the architecture of it, but I had to go through the belief of karma to kind of get to this point. And the jesters or the trickster realms showed me a lot about that. So anyways, I created this meditation based upon those readings, and I put it on Patreon, and it was going good. Like, it was a way for me to transmute the karma of my ancestors. Because at the time I was like, my ancestors weren't always good, right? Like, I might be holding on the energies of ancestors that were slaveholders. Slaveholders came in all different colors. All right. So I probably have some like more white European ancestors in my bloodline, but then I also had like Moors in my bloodline who are very melanated. Okay. But they were pioneers of the slave trade in a lot of ways. So I was understanding that, and also kind of like clearing that karma too, So I was like, look, if I have karma, I'm going to take responsibility for it. And the karma that I don't have, I'm going to send it back. Okay. So that was my thing. But so I was doing this like karma transmutation meditation, and it was going good for a while. But then I got to this weird point where I was doing this through meditation. So I met these beings, and I was completely sober. I was just put on my meditation and I had some silver and gold frequencies embedded in it. And I was able to go into this realm of the trickster or the jester. Okay. Wasn't trying to though. I was trying to clear karma. So what I'm doing is I'm working on clearing karma of my ancestors. Right. And then I see this, the best way I can describe it, it kind of looked like this, y'all. It kind of looked like this. But it was like actually from that movie. I don't know if y'all remember that movie back in the 90s with Lorenz Tate. A lot of like melanated actors were actually in this movie called Dead Presidents. And it's basically about this guy who goes to the Vietnam War, and he first starts off like wanting to fight for his country, wanting to travel, wanting to experience new things, gets really caught up in a lot of war stuff in the Vietnam War, but serves his country well, does what's asked of him, goes above and beyond, comes back to New York. No opportunities are for him. And he has this really big sense of injustice. Okay, so this is one way that the Nephilim trickster archetype plays out. Okay, and it's a pretty interesting. I just actually watched the movie, so when I was seeing this dead president's energy, I only saw like the poster of the movie, because at the time when the movie came out, I was too young really to see it. And I didn't think about it, but I remember seeing the movie poster of it, because the guy's face was in all white and he had like black circles around his eyes, and he was the Nephilim. And something about that image was always really striking to me. It was also really spooky. I didn't really want to see the movie, but that image stood out in my mind for some reason. So when I'm like clearing karma, I see this like Nephilim. I didn't know the name for it at the time. I see this like Nephilim figure come up, and he's in this face paint, okay? And he has this trickster vibe to him, you know? And so it starts off with one of him. Kind of looks like he's in like some sort of tribal paint in a way. And then all of a sudden he multiplies by the thousands. So it's almost like he's showing me, and it's like we're in this like weird mirrored realm while it's happening. And what he's showing me is like, you think you're gonna clear me? There's 1,000 more that's just like me. I'm just gonna keep duplicating myself and duplicating myself and duplicating myself. And you're never gonna get rid of this, because this is the design of this realm. Okay, you're not supposed to clear this. All right, so try again. So he's kind of taunting me, and I'm like, whoa, you know, because like I thought I cleared it. You know, I was doing this thing to like absorb the energies of like different ancestors and stuff and release them and all that. And I thought I did it, and then he just replicated himself like thousands upon thousands of times over. And then the next image that came to me was like the V for Vendetta image. So that's another example. You know, if y'all seen that movie V for Vendetta with Natalie Portman, that guy with the V for Vendetta mask, he's another kind of Nephilim figure. If you look at what that movie represents, that movie represents somebody who's like disenchanted with the way of the system and wants to be a glitch within the system, and utilizes the energy of the Nephilim, that black and white energy, that trickster kind of energy to basically show the integration of polarity and also the injustice of the world, you know? So the next image that appears in this karma clearing meditation is this like V for Vendetta energy, okay? And he puts this guy with the V for Vendetta mask comes up, and he like pokes a gun at me, you know, and I'm like face to face. So I'm like, this shit's scary, but I'm like, I'm just gonna focus. I'm not gonna like detach, you know, like I'm gonna master my mind. He points a gun at me and then shoots it. And then what comes out is one of those little flags that says pow, you know what I mean? So it was also this energy of like, yeah, there might be injustice, but a lot of this is made up anyways. And a lot of this is a joke. Okay. So that was like the first time I encountered this kind of more trickster jester realm. It was kind of in a way like a weird quote spiritual attack, but it was also showing me like the way you're going about this whole thing, you might want to reevaluate it, because you need to look more at the structural issues of what's happening. And going back to that movie called Dead Presidents, you know, that movie starts out with a whole bunch of burning money. Okay, that's kind of what starts the movie. And that's another energy of the trickster or the jester or the Nephilim. Because who burns money? What crazy person would do that, you know, especially in such a highly capitalistic society where the dollar or, you know, the fiat currency represents all? Who would be in their right mind and burn money? But the Nephilim or the Trickster or the Jester is above those sorts of things. Like, they're not concerned about those sorts of energies, okay? What ends up happening in this movie is this guy and a group of his friends that were all in different ways very disenchanted with the structures of society. They get together because they couldn't find jobs, or they couldn't find other ways to support themselves, you know? Even though a lot of them had served their country, maybe they came back wounded. And so they get together and they actually try to rob a bank, you know, and they succeed. But at the end of the day, they end up either dead or sentenced to life in prison, okay? And the movie was kind of a meditation on, you know, what is justice, you know? And in this case, Lorenz Tate's character takes on this energy of the Nephilim, which is, you will never see justice. You will always be in a lower state, no matter what you do. And it's more about the structure that you're in. And all of those people who robbed that bank, they all had the mask, the face paint of the Nephilim, okay? Now, there's a really powerful energy of the Nephilim because, you know, I'm showing this little doll thingy, right? It kind of reminds me of, it's not quite, but it's like towing the line of a minstrel sort of energy, right? If y'all know about the minstrels. So especially talking about like American history, there is this interest, this energy of the minstrel, okay? Because America, like the way, or I should say the United States, the way a lot of it was created was through racial politics. It was the splitting of black and white. You know, segregation was a part of the binary code that the US was built upon, all right? And there's an interesting dynamic if you think about, like, when you go into a courtroom, what colors are is the judge wearing? The judge is wearing black and white. When you look at a police car, right, what colors are on the police car? It's gonna be black and white. This is a representation of the binary code within the simulation. But let's go back to the healing power of the Nephilim. The Nephilim is able to nullify all threats by becoming the threat, okay? Because back in Native American or indigenous practices, the Nephilim was able to, quote, scare away evil by dressing like and acting like the evil. Well, that's, if you think about it from that standpoint, a minstrel, which basically is, a lot of times it was a white person. I'm gonna put all that in quotation marks, so I don't believe in white or black people. But, you know, there was a white person dressed a lot of times with face paint like a black person, okay? And they were acting like a black person, okay? And I'm somebody who studied race, okay? I went really deep into race. So when I studied this, I studied it from the standpoint, I was from a very binary coded standpoint of, okay, this was an act of hate. This was an act of humiliating the, quote, black person. This was a way of taking away the power of a black person. But I was seeing it from a binary coded perspective. There's another aspect as it relates to the minstrel. These minstrel shows, and we have to think about it, a lot of this happened in the theater. This happened on stage. People weren't just dressing up, or quote, white people weren't just dressing up like, quote, black people in the streets. I'm sure that happened sometimes. But a lot of times it was in a very contained performance space. A lot of times this was happening in the movies. Okay, these were, you know, if you even look at Birth of a Nation, like one of the most, you know, iconic first films of, you know, the times in the US. A lot of that had minstrels in it. It had, quote, white people in blackface. But that was only a part of it. What I wasn't seeing was the ritual behind it. Because the people who were doing this in the theater, they were taking on the energy of the Nephilim. And if you become the thing, you take away the power of that thing. If you become the black person, you absorb the energy of the black person. It's actually a very I'm not going to call it spiritual. I'm going to say it is it's an archetypical strategy to absorb or drain power sometimes, okay? But what was happening when we think about, when we learn about minstrel shows, we think about it from just the standpoint of racial hate. But if you look at it deeper and if you study the energy of the Nephilim and the tool of the Nephilim and what that energy was utilized for, a lot of times it was an energy to absorb power and nullify all threats. It was a war tactic, okay? And so, but a lot of times we look at these energies of the minstrel and we immediately kind of want to go, oh, like that's just weird, and that's the energy of the jester. You're stepping into the realm of the trickster. You're stepping into the realm of mirrors. You're not supposed to be comfortable. It's not supposed to make quite a lot of sense, okay? Up is down, black is white. It's based upon inversion, all right? But the energy of the minstrel, which is very much connected to the theater and the theatrics of things, has to do with it. If you've watched a lot of films in Hollywood, right? You notice how, there's a complaint a lot of times where, why is it that the melanated person dies first? Why is it that it seems like the melanated person gets sacrificed? A lot of times that's just a symbolic representation of opening of the gates of the void. Because we have to think about it. The melanated person has melanin. Melanin is attached to dark matter energy. And if you quote kill a melanated person, right, what you're doing is you're opening up the gates to the underworld. You're opening up the gates to another dimension. When we think about what happens when we watch films, is we are under ritual. We are under a lot of times we're under ritual if we're watching anything from a cartoon to even like a weird commercial to a movie, those sorts of things. And so to really be able to master those energies, you have to go into like the dark matter consciousness. What better way to do that than to quote kill a melanated person? You're immediately initiating into dark matter consciousness when you do that. So, in a more binary perspective, you could say, oh, wow, like, why are the black people always dying first? Okay, valid question. It's, it could be a little annoying. But if you're looking at it more from a ritualistic sort of way, a polarity integrated sort of way, like the realm of the trickster and the realm of the trickster, the realm of the jester, you are in the realm of, a lot of times you're in the realm of theater, and that can go into politics. A lot of times when we look at different politicians who are, quote, debating each other or fighting each other, a lot of times behind the scenes, they're on the same side. It's political theater, okay? So when you step into the realm of the jester, when you step into the realm of the Nephilim, you are stepping into the realm of theater in a lot of ways, okay? Performance, all right? And the people who create a lot of these movies and stuff, even the ones that are like really stupid, the ones that don't really seem like they make a lot of sense or the writing isn't that great, the people who are even able to bring these ideas to fruition to millions of people have had to either A, go through their own forms of initiation, or B, be a part of a bloodline that naturally has a more priestly lineage, okay? You don't just become a Hollywood writer just for like no reason, okay? That's an extremely high amount of power to wield, okay? And the people who step into those energies have to go through an intensive process of initiation to even be there, okay? This is why I like to watch movies. I mean, I went through a time where I stopped. I didn't watch anything, and I'm glad I went through that time. But now seeing it from a non-polarized approach and looking at this from a concept of initiation, I've been learning so much, by even watching the stupidest things. It's kind of like, y'all notice how there's this thing around The Simpsons, that old school cartoon, The Simpsons, and how The Simpsons have predicted so much, right? The Simpsons predicted so many things. Well, the people who wrote The Simpsons, I believe they're like Yale graduates, and that's a show that's been going on for a really long time. Were they predicting, or were they saying like, hey, this is what was going to go down? You're stepping into the realm of the trickster. So you, at some point, especially if you're feeling like oppressed, right? If you're feeling oppressed by the ways of the system, you want to start studying the archetype of the trickster and the archetype of the Nephilim. And you want to do this and embody these energies as much as you can. You might come from a certain lineage that is naturally attached to these energies. And you kind of have to go through some weird programming to get into these realms or to access these realms. But it could be to your benefit. If you want to stop playing the game of binary and transcend the binary code of the simulation, well, then you want to study the realm of people who have mastery over the trickster. The Nephilim has been utilized to oppress, but that same energy has put a certain group of people on a pedestal, okay? Because they know the power of the Nephilim and they've utilized it to their own advantage, okay? So the thing about initiating is you don't need to join a cult to initiate. Anybody can have access to this information. The illusion is that you need to be of a certain bloodline to have access. That's all an illusion, okay? It's a very convenient illusion to cast. And yeah, you will face challenges and difficulties as you initiate, especially if you don't come from certain bloodlines and stuff like that, okay? That stuff will come up, but that doesn't mean you don't have access, okay? If you know who you are and you know that you're entitled to this information, then how can it ever be kept from you? So I want to discuss something else about the Jester. Let's talk about the Jester in particular. So if you start studying like Masonic orders and secret societies, you get to the realm of the Jesters. I'm not going to name them specifically in this particular conversation, but if you're curious, you'll find all the information that you'll need. But once you get to the highest orders of the Masonic realms, you get into the realm of the Jesters. The Jester's main goal is to have fun. The Jester's main goal is to play. The Jesters, you will find, are very invested in children. They either sponsor circuses or they sponsor children's hospitals, okay? But once you get to studying the realm of the Jesters, you start noticing very obvious inversions of justice when you get into this realm. You'll start seeing different news reports and different commentaries written up about the very obvious inversions of injustice, okay? However, they're not being hypocrites. They're not being corrupt. They are holding the realm of polarity integration, of being neither this nor that, being above justice, being above the black and white realms of the simulation. What you're seeing is that they have been able to transcend those sorts of energies because of the initiation that they've gone through. And so you might see them get busted from time to time, but really they'll be able to go and do things business as usual for as long as this version of the simulation lasts, because their inversion of justice is a part of the social order. Okay, this is why they are able to be the highest ranking. And it's an invite only kind of energy. And you'll notice that too about the realm of the Jesters, as above, so below. So whatever's happening in the 3D version of the simulation, what we find on Google, what we see in the news, there's another version of that that's happening within the other dimensions of the collective unconscious. you'll know that you might need to take a deep dive into the realm of the jesters, because you'll be invited. You'll have an invitation. An energy of that will come into your awareness and consciousness. If you're trying to be a light worker, if you're trying to fight the dark, if you're trying to fight the forces of evil, you either won't have access to these realms, or when you do have access to these realms will seek to attack you. Okay? You will get very adversarial energies when you visit these realms. It's kind of like that energy of, like, I don't know if y'all remember that old school movie from the 80s, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Really funny movie. You'll get more of that kind of energy with them, okay? But if you are within a path of polarity integration, seeing the power of the dark and seeing the power of the light, but you're diving more into the realm of dark matter energy, and you're looking to create your own world outside of what's being presented to you within the simulation. You'll have a very interesting, in-depth teaching experience with them. They'll teach you the structures of the simulation. You'll start learning about the realm of mirrors. You'll start learning about the realm of parallel dimensions. You'll start learning about when it's time to go through a mirror into another mirror dimension, and when it's time to shatter a mirror. Okay, you will start noticing and being able to manipulate the art of illusion. These are all very, very important skills as you work to transcend the binary code of the simulation. It is a masterful energy. It is a scary energy. It is an inverted energy. You will see many, many types of depravity within this energy, okay? And you can judge it, hey, to each its own, but you'll get to a point where you'll need to see through it, okay? From a state of non-duality, not from a state of judgment. So because you will want to absorb that energy, so that energy doesn't fight you. This is the realm of the Nephilim, okay? And a lot of people who feel like they're being spiritually attacked, or who are experiencing spiritual attacks, they have not mastered the realm of polarity integration. Okay, and they have not fully taken on and embodied the power of the trickster. You must absorb any adversarial energies that come into your path. And when you do that, you learn from them. You learn all their secrets, and they can't touch you. That's why a lot of this is an illusion. And everything that I'm saying is neither real nor unreal, okay? This is the liminal space, all right? You get to a certain part within the simulation where you're working from a void space of all that is, okay? And so if you get caught up too much in what is just, or what is right, or what is supposed to be, you're working off of somebody else's construction anyway, and you're playing on someone else's game board. But when you get into the realm of the trickster and the jester, and you stop trying to fight the trickster or the jester, because you can't fight them, okay? They've mastered the game board. They know all the ins and outs of it. But if you can become them, then that information gets transferred onto you, okay? So that is the realm. And I'm going to give you one more aspect of the trickster, the Nephilim, and the jester. And that is the child, okay? Because as I mentioned earlier, right? And I talked about this a lot in, I did a download on the 5th house. So if you go to, I have a playlist right now on YouTube. It's called Deprogramming Astrology. I actually haven't finished it yet. I'm supposed to go through all the astrological houses. I started going more into the energies of the archetypes. So I've kind of taken a break. I'll be back though. I'll go through all the astrological houses eventually. But I did a download on the 5th house, and I also discussed the realm of the jester in the 5th house, because it's a very childish energy. You're getting into the realm of the crossroads, and one of the best deities related to this would be Olegba or Eshu. Okay, they are at the realm of the crossroads. And, sometimes Eshu is known as being the straight up devil, Okay, when you get into the realm of Olegba and Eshu, you're also within this Halloween type energy, this trick or treat type energy. Okay, Olegba sometimes shows up as a child, wanting lots of candy. Okay, this is that energy, that crossroads energy of Halloween. That's what it's based upon. This is why during Halloween you have a lot of the energies of like mask wearing and costumes and becoming different things and being neither this nor that. You're even walking the crossroads at night as you trick or treat. Trick or treat, that's also a play on polarity, okay? It's a very childish energy. But it's not just any child. It's not the divine child. This is the badass kid child energy, the baby's kid energy, okay? This is your Dennis the Menace kind of energy, or your Home Alone energy. So the last part of this that I'm going to focus on is I'm going to focus on Macaulay Culkin in his Home Alone series, okay? Home Alone 1 and Home Alone 2. I think they did a Home Alone 3, but by then there was another child. So, you know, as I'm sharing the story of Home Alone, I also want you to simultaneously think about the story of Macaulay Culkin and all of the things he needed to endure being a child star in Hollywood. Okay, there's a connection, all right? There is a role that he played on film, and there was a, quote, reality he experienced behind the scenes, but they're both interconnected. This is all the realm of the Jester. This is why the Jesters invest in children. Okay, this is why the highest orders of these secret societies, they are around children. There is a very, very interconnectedness as it relates to this. Okay, if you think about the archetype of Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone 1 and Home Alone 2, what happens, right? So first of all, he is the ignored and forgotten child. His family literally forgot him when they went on vacation. Okay, and also he wasn't having the greatest relationship with his family to begin with. He was kind of a problem child. You know, he would just get into trouble and that sort of stuff. He was a little bit too smart for his own good. Okay, so he ends up getting left behind, and he ends up experiencing a lot of different hijinks along the way. He engages in his own criminal activity during these Home Alone series, right? Like he ends up running up his parents' credit card bills. He's like going and shopping in these like elaborate toy stores and getting all the toys that he wants. And, you know, he's also doing good things. He's giving some toys away. He's connecting with people who normally within the simulation would be considered not worth anything. So in one of the Home Alone movies, I forgot if it was Home Alone 1 or Home Alone 2. And oh, thank you guys. I'm going to read the comments after too. I promise. Like, so if y'all have a question specifically, I will, I'll share it too. Okay. But, so in, Home Alone 1 and Home Alone 2, remember how Macaulay Culkin, he befriends that bird woman, that woman who's like in the park and she's like homeless. You know, most people would look at her and be like, I don't know, she's a crazy lady talking to birds, you know? But he befriends her. He sees past the illusion of what the simulation says she is, right? And he makes a deep connection with her. He also has a really adversarial energy with the hotel manager, right? The hotel manager is kind of like one of those people who only wants to talk to you if you have a lot of wealth and money. And Macaulay Culkin's character plays upon that energy, right? He sees that and he exploits it. He is very much in his trickster, jester sort of energy with this. You know, he parades himself first as being this really rich kid, this rich and privileged kid. He's running up his parents' credit cards, you know, he's getting everything. And, you know, the hotel manager, he's all down for it. He's like, oh yeah, he's rich. I'm gonna get like these big tips and all that sort of stuff. So Macaulay Culkin exploits that energy. But then later on, you know, this hotel manager becomes Macaulay Culkin's like worst enemy in a lot of ways, because, you know, then he realizes, oh, he's a fraud and all that kind of stuff. So Macaulay Culkin has to play a series of tricks on him as well. And then you have these robbers, right? These two guys that are trying to rob houses. They're trying to exploit people during the holidays. And Macaulay Culkin does a lot to basically teach them a lesson about greed, right? He sees that these robbers are trying to take advantage of people, or trying to basically trying to steal and all that kind of stuff. And so he plays certain tricks on these guys too. People who are obsessed with more worldly things, he exploits in both Home Alone 1 and Home Alone 2. This is the archetype of the trickster. And this brings me back to that Dead Presidents movie. There's a very specific reason that at the very beginning of that movie, they show burning cash. That's not a normal thing that you see. They don't really want to show that. They don't want to encourage you to like burn money. Like, you're kind of burning your God in a way. You know, it's kind of one of the worst things you can do, right? But there was another movie that I can recall where money was burned. Large amounts of money was burned. And that was in the movie The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight, that Batman movie with the Joker. And if you look at the Joker, right, and the way his face paint, he has a kind of a Nephilim vibe. All right, he didn't have the black face. They're not going to have him have black face, but he had the white face and he had the black circles around his eyes. And how interesting, here the Joker is, he's so not even thinking about the law. Like, he's not thinking about the things that society trained him to think about. So he's burning the money. He's going to rob the bank and then he's going to burn it all. That's what they also did in Dead Presidents. Do you think it's a coincidence that they're wearing the same type of face paint in both films? Okay, so this is the energy of the jokester, or the Joker, the trickster, the Nephilim, the Jester. They're very connected. And when you get to a certain part of initiation, then you're actually not worried about money, because you're seeing the illusion behind it. You know, you're seeing that that's also just a part of the game board. And if you're transcending the game board, you're not having the same worries about it. You know, that's why there are certain people. I'm going to do another archetype thing on the con artist. So that's going to be for another energy. But you get into this energy of like, if you are able to get to certain aspects of society, you no longer have to spend money. You're so, quote, rich that your appearance of being rich, or your vibration of richness, is your currency. You don't have to pay. Okay, that's a certain energy. And so that is a part of that like burning money energy too. Like, deeper beneath the surface, you get to a certain point in the simulation where it's not about the money. You could care less about it. And yet you still thrive. Okay. But that's a hard place to get to. Okay. You got to overcome a lot of fear programs. And just depending on your bloodline, okay, you might have different energies come at you as it relates to it. Because as you work on transcending the binary code of the simulation, that's the first thing that you're going to be like, quote, attacked with is your money. Okay. That's just how it be. Okay. But you know, if you can see beyond the mirror realm and, initiate yourself, you need to learn the power of the mirror. The mirror can be used as a form of protection, and it can be used as a weapon. And you need to be able to master all realms of the mirror. Okay. You need to know when to shatter it. You need to know when to literally go through it. You need to know when to see past it. You need to know when the mirror that you're looking at is distorted. Okay. And this is the realm of the 12th house. This is the realm of Neptune. This is the realm of theater. This is the realm of the priesthood. All right. You're not really supposed to know these things. These things are supposed to be locked and hidden from you. But if you are going to master the energy of the trickster, you will need to master the 12th house. Okay. Otherwise, what will happen is a trickster will appear in your world and they will master you. Okay. And you will try to fight them in all kinds of means as it relates to what's legal, what's just, what's right, what's fair, and you'll get your ass kicked. Okay. And they'll be laughing at you. Okay, because that's, hey, that's the realm of the trickster. All right, that's the realm of the jester. So I'm gonna stop it there. I'm gonna keep going on with this archetype stuff. There's a lot of, you know, juicy ones that are coming out. If you are looking to go deeper with these energies, then I would highly recommend looking at the things I have on Bandcamp. Those energies in particular are for folks who are initiating through very specific energies. I actually have a lot that I'm going to be uploading soon. Black Diamond on Patreon is another energy that might be supportive for you. I just closed out my Spiral Sound Lab series on Patreon, where it's like a 4-month course on like creating your own subliminals, creating your own soundscapes. And the next course that I'm actually going to be launching next month on 12/12, December 12th, is around this energy of the priesthood and initiation. It's called Sacred Leadership. And it's a sacred leadership intensive where we're going to be doing a 1 month, or I should say once a month class. And then it'll also be with a, you know, a support call with me. And this will all be on Black Diamond. I'll be sharing more about this sacred leadership path. One thing I will say is when I first initiated a sacred leadership journey, I did so through a retreat. I did an in-person retreat in Peru. And it was an extremely, it was a phenomenal learning experience for me, but it was really difficult at the time because I was only approaching sacred leadership from the perspective of a light worker. And in many ways, I got my ass kicked because I wasn't really understanding the energies that were at play. I was still kind of in like 5D light worker consciousness, all that kind of stuff. Okay. And the trickster came for me, like the jester came for me. A lot of energies came for me. And I was too afraid or too polarized to go into the dark matter realm to master those energies. So those energies mastered me. Okay. And so you know, this retreat happened, let's see, I think that happened in 2021 or 2022. So I kind of had to take a step back. At first I started like with a sabbatical and I went into my own energies and I went into the dark matter energy of things. Not looking at the shadow as just being something to clear, not looking at the underworld as just being something to avoid, but going through these energies. So I'm now relaunching Sacred Leadership more from the dark matter template, because all of these energies you must master. All these things that have been adversarial towards you in your life, you need to become those energies to nullify them, okay? That's what sacred leadership is. So all these, like if you felt like you've been persecuted in certain secret societies or orders and stuff like that, that's because you're supposed to know that information. You have to put yourself through those energies. That's what sacred leadership is about, and I'll be sharing more information about that. And it does launch on 12/12, December 12th, 2025, and it will go on for the full year. That's just going to be the energy that 2026 will be. It will be this sacred leadership energy. Okay. So, and I'll be sharing more stuff about that. Very excited. Okay. I kind of wanted to put that on the shelf for a while because I got my ass kicked for a bit, but hey, the losses are what make you stronger. And it's an invitation sometimes to master certain energies. So I'm really, really excited about that. Okay. So I'm going to just like look for questions. Okay. Let's see. Thank you, Tarot, for Lisette, by Lisette. I appreciate you. Sacred Heart says you didn't like how that movie ended. I'm assuming you're talking about dead presidents. And I didn't either. But here's the thing. When you watch these movies, just watch them for the archetypes, because they're going to put a lot of gems and jewels, but they're not going to give you everything, right? They're still going to follow a certain protocol. And that was also filmed back in the 90s. Like we were in a completely different energy then. Okay. And what's funny was this Dead Presidents movie was coming to my mind. Like sometimes I channel movies or songs to listen to. Like that's what will come to me. You know, I'll when I dive into the collective unconscious, it's not always like some guru revelation. Sometimes it's like, read this book, watch this movie, listen to this song. Okay. So, Dead Presidents was coming up for me, you know, and that's actually a part of the movie. A big part of that movie, Sacred Heart, is, if you are part of a Nephilim lineage, you are not supposed to receive justice. It's a key, it's a code. Okay. So if you look deeper, I mean, and the same thing, like if we think about the Dark Knight, right? And the Joker, what happened to the actor who played the Joker shortly after that movie? A very Nephilim type storyline. Okay. So it's almost like if you take on the role of the Nephilim without mastering the energies of the Trickster and the Jester, and like fully integrating, like not seeing anything as your enemy, but simply becoming it, if you will get very harshly handled with by the quote justice system. Okay. By the priesthood a lot of times. So that's really what that movie was saying. It was showing you like, hey, if you're coded as Nephilim, and you try to take matters into your own hands on our game board, this is what will happen to you. Okay. And that's what you see at the end of Dead Presidents. Black and white is duality. Yes. Okay. So Situation Fighter asked, do you know Virat Kohli? I don't know that. I need to look that up. Okay. Yes. And Tarot by Lisette says Alegua is represented by a child. Exactly. Okay. So somebody's asking, what does shattering a mirror exactly do? So I learned about the mirror realm through some really deep spiritual attacks. I'll say that. Narcissistic projection. This is a great time to shatter mirrors. So, a narcissist is always going to project whatever they are experiencing onto you. Okay. It's actually, a narcissist is kind of in this trickster jester energy. This is why narcissists sometimes seem infallible, because they really, really do know the mechanics of energy. You can actually learn a master class through working with a narcissist, but you can't fight them. If you fight a narcissist, you will lose. You always will, because you're playing the game of polarity and they've mastered it. Their energetic field has mastered it in certain ways. And a lot of times the narcissists, what's really going on with narcissists is they have more, quote, root permissions in the simulation, or they're root users in the simulation, meaning that they already have permission to do kind of what they want on the game board with no repercussions. So if you try to fight them and you don't have those same root permissions or root user capabilities, good luck. Okay, good luck. And one thing that they're really good at doing is taking their stuff and projecting it onto you. They're mastering the realm of the mirror. Okay. So for me to learn this, I had to go through a lot of dark psychology type stuff. I had to go through the whole gang stalking, targeted individual, all that kind of stuff, but I couldn't stay there. I couldn't stay targeted. I couldn't stay gang stalked, because if I did, then there's a power dynamic that I'm feeding into. So what I did is I started moving more into dark psychology. This is when you get into that art of war type energy and stuff. And you study, you gotta really study the people that are supposedly opposing you and know how and why they move. So that is a great time to shatter a mirror, because narcissistic projection is them saying I am me and you are me and I am you. So it's you try to say, you're gaslighting me or you're doing this, but then they're going to project that back onto you and say, you're gaslighting me and you're doing this, So at those particular moments, you're going to want to shatter the mirror. Okay. And nullify the mirror. And you don't do this. You don't talk to them. You don't confront them. You don't write them a long letter or email. You don't even go on social media and rant on them. They're going to do all that. That's their territory. But what you're going to do is you're going to go into your innermost self, and you're going to go into your meditative state. And you're going to do that work internally. And that's going to reflect you a different mirror externally. You don't have to confront them. I never recommend doing that, actually, unless you want stuff to blow up in your face. And sometimes that's a great learning experience, but you don't want to stay there because you're just always going to be in this state of war, and it's an energy harvesting tool. I actually have a very good subliminal called the mirror effect. I did it like a year and a half ago. So just type in the Goddess Keys, the mirror effect. I also have a subliminal playlist, so you can go through that. And I utilize the energy of shattering a mirror in that. And it's specifically designed for people who are going through like lots of narcissistic projection. You do that internally, and then you just don't see that because you've shattered those mirrors in your internal. Now externally, you have a new reality that you're experiencing. And this is why I say that I move through the liminal space, things neither being real nor not real. And things can always change and shift, okay? And it works better. Your life's easier. You have more joy, you have more fun, you have more flow when you do it. Because if you try to like go toe to toe with them, you're playing on their game board. You want to be somewhere else. You want to be in a parallel, okay? So that's kind of what I mean when I say that. You're welcome to Divine Femme. Okay. You're welcome, Andrew. You're welcome, Believe in Your Inner Magic. Okay, the correlations are hitting. Okay, so somebody's asking, so Believe in Your Inner Magic is asking, how can you deal with frequency fences, or how do you avoid it? I don't think you can avoid frequency fences. I think you gotta like go up against them sometimes and get shocked to know that they're there. Okay, like for example, when I mentioned the story earlier, how I was trying to clear karma, and then I ended up in the realm of the Jester. For people who are on my Patreon, on Genetic Path Cutter, the download I'm talking about that shares more about this experience is called something about duplicated ancestries. Just type in duplicated ancestries to find it. I was in you could say I was in a frequency fence when I was there. Like they were like, oh, you're trying to clear karma, but no, you're supposed to be here. Because, you know, karma is really a containment mechanism to say that this is your sandbox. This is your place. It's like the energy of VIP. Do you have the access to get into this VIP space that has free drinks and people look cuter and the celebrities there that you can take pictures with and the chairs are nicer? Oh, you don't? You need to stay here. That's what karma is. That's all it is. Okay? This is why, quote, bad things happen to good people, and then other people are able to do whatever they want without impunity. They're in a different frequency. Doesn't mean they're better people. Doesn't mean that they're worth more. They just have different root permissions and access. It's just a coding issue, okay? Sometimes you got to go against those frequency fences to know exactly what you're dealing with. You know, sometimes you got to get your ass kicked. It just is what it is, okay? It's not all light work in here, okay? It's really not. And the light workers get the most of it. If you stay a light worker, your ass will get kicked the most. You will stay spiritually attacked. That's it. Sorry. You got to go into the dark matter template. That's how everything's being created. And that's how you will bring the new. If you want to see something new, you have to go into the dark. You can't avoid the dark. If you're thinking that the dark is evil, then you're staying on the game board of the simulation that is oppressing you. Okay? So, first, to answer your question is, I don't think you can avoid the frequency fence. I think you need to experience it. I think you need to get shocked by it. I think you need to do that to understand or understand how it works. That being said, how do you deal with them? A few ways. You definitely want to start with the mirror. Start working with the mirrors and start shattering the mirrors, okay? So that would be if you're experiencing like, you know, frequency fences will show up first with people. They'll show up with like karmic family members. They'll show up with, quote, haters, ops, gang stalkers, all that stuff. It's going to start there. So you start with shattering the mirror, okay? And you start with not seeing them as evil, or, you know, you start just wanting to destroy any projections that take you out of who you truly are. So you know, I would just start with that mirror effect subliminal to get started. The next thing you're going to want to do is like take a really hard look at your birth chart. Okay. Your birth chart is a map. It shows you the root permissions you have in the simulation. It shows the archetypes that you are assigned in the simulation. Okay. It's your instruction manual for this game board. So you want to know what that is so you can have mastery over it. Okay. So that you can start clearing. And this is where I would need to work with you a little bit more one-on-one. So there's, I do have like a genetic path cutter reading on Ko-Fi that you can check out. I have a Beyond the Birth chart on Ko-Fi reading that, that you can check out, where you get the Beyond the Birth chart book. I do your birth chart not to tell you who you are, but to say, hey, these are the certain root permissions that you don't have in the simulation. This is what you're going to want to unlock and clear. It's like you move from I'm a light worker to I'm in a simulated game board and I need to unlock certain aspects of the world that I want to see. You know, you might have a very specific dream, but you're coded currently in the simulation to have the opposite. You need to know that, and then you need to start unlocking different aspects of what you want. And we do this through a process of technomancy, okay? And yeah, so I would either check out the Black Diamond on Patreon. I do one-on-ones too. So like right now I offer a one-on-one service called Game Maker, where we go in this really in a lot of depth over 1 year. Okay. And I work with you 1 year, one-on-one doing this. It's very meticulous. It's very, very meticulous. Okay. Like I can't give you an exact, like you're going to do this and then you're going to do that. Like I can give you some, but you are unlocking an avatar. You might be coded with one avatar, but the dream you want is a completely other avatar who has very different root permissions and has a different script. And we got to get you there. Okay. So, but I would start with Beyond the Birth chart. And I would start with the subliminals. I even have a subliminal around frequency fences that this will prime your subconscious to be ready for this other stuff. Okay, because some of this stuff might sound like super weird what I'm saying right now. And if I heard somebody tell me this, like, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, I'd be like, what? So I had to prime my subconscious in certain ways to even receive this type of information. But once you do, like, you know, life just becomes a lot easier. There's a lot of stuff I don't worry about. Even if I get in certain situations that could seem like, oh, that seems bad, I can flip that around so quick. Like what? Like once you start knowing how this stuff works, it just shifts things. Okay. All right, let's see. Yes. So Dante, CH Dante, I did just describe shattering a mirror. So yeah, just rewind and you'll see it. Okay, so Andrew Johnson says, Spirit tells me that the mirror universe is on the lower end of the spectrum and to be careful doing that. Says many get stuck in it. Yes, yes, you can get stuck in the mirror. That's why I would start with shattering them. Because especially if you are going through a lot of attacking energy, sometimes you just got to go into the fun house with a bat, just start shattering all that stuff. But if you're working on getting out of the game board of the simulation, you start noticing that the foundation that you're on is a mirror. The dimension that you're in is made of mirrors. If you just shatter them all day, and that's what I was doing at first, you just shatter them all day, that will start being an energy drain. It's helpful for you to navigate things, but if you're like trying to take your consciousness outside of that game board, you need to walk through the mirror. Yes, you can get caught up in it. This is why you must integrate polarity. You got to get out of this good versus evil sort of program. So you're right. You are right, Andrew. So it's really about you having the discernment and knowing what works for you. Okay. Okay, so now it says also when you walk up to a mirror, you are seeing your own shadow twin because you are not who you think you are in the mirror. You would have to take a picture and flip it and then, yeah. and then you would actually be able to see yourself. Yeah, the twin dynamic has been a part of the simulation. This idea that there is somebody who completes us outside of ourselves. And this is why you need to work on merging and integrating polarity. And a lot of times the twin aspect of yourself could be seen as more, quote, evil or adversarial. And you need to go toe to toe with whoever that is and merge with it. So there's not two of you anymore. So you've integrated those energies. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, Tarot by Lisette. If you look in my description, you'll see some more information about those. You know, I have a 3 month, no, I have a 1 month, a 3 month, and a 12-month offering that I'm doing for one-on-one. Like, that's people who really don't like to do the group stuff. But then I have something too on Patreon to support folks who don't need, like, you know, they're not ready to take as much of a deep dive. Because, you know, when I'm doing the game maker sort of energies and the 12 months, and like we're in communication quite regularly. What I do on Patreon is I offer classes, and then I have like monthly classes, and then I have a 1 month optional phone call. Like, if you have questions, you just need to talk, you know. Some people are looking for more than that, and so then they do the one-on-one deep dives, but then I have like the energies on Patreon too. Divine Femme, yes. Sacred Leadership is going to be a class that I put on Black Diamond starting 12/12. So I just ended the Spiral Sound Lab, and so the next class is going to be the reboot of Sacred Leadership. So I developed like a curriculum for it. It was like kind of more for like workplace wellness sort of stuff, but I wasn't fully understanding the energies I was meant to absorb or initiate into. So I had to kind of take my own step away from that. And then, you know, a lot of what you've seen on Patreon has been part of that initiation. It hasn't been the whole part. But now I'm kind of ready to share like the leadership energies, you know, and if you are, you know, what it takes to be a leader. It does take initiation. And it takes initiation in the things that you're sometimes are forbidden from ever knowing, okay? It doesn't mean that just because you know, an outsider says that you're forbidden, you know, you are the deciding factor of that. So yes, that will be on Black Diamond. Okay, so Believe in Your Inner Magic asks, is using your subliminal enough to break soul contracts? How many times a day, and how long do I have to know if soul contracts and codes are being broken? Okay, so I did a video about 3 months ago now that I would highly recommend that you check out. Believe in Your Inner Magic. It is called From Soul Contracts to Root Permissions. So I recorded this, I believe, sometime in September 2025. So just scroll my content for that. I'm going to briefly share what I shared in that message, but if you want more context, definitely go to that download. I do not believe in soul contracts anymore. I actually did a podcast episode about 2 months ago that I shared. It is called The Architecture of the Soul. I would check that out too. This is going to sound crazy. I know, so I already know. It's going to sound really weird what I'm about to say. I do not believe in naming the soul. I do not associate with a soul. Ooh, am I the devil? Did I lose my soul? This is all from my own experience and from deep study and pulling on these energies for quite a while. Here's how the simulation works. This is why I operate from the liminal space of nothing is real, nothing is unreal. Okay, the way it works, if you name it, you own it. I'm going to say that again. If you name it, you own it. Who named the soul? What's the etymology of the soul? Who owns the soul? Is it yours? Did you name it? You are unnameable. You want to access what is outside of this simulation. And that is, there's no language that can express what that is. If you align with the architecture of the soul, your soul has or that unnameable essence of yourself has the potential to be contained by some other being, lineage, what have you, whoever named it, whoever created that concept. So you'll find that your soul's always going to be imprisoned if you go with your soul, if you go with I have a soul. Okay? Because you're unnameable. Like, you get to a certain point in the simulation where it's not, creation happens before language. You need to go to before anything is named, and you need to create from that space, and it's all nonverbal. So in the From Soul Contracts to Root Permissions download that I did, I discussed that I was learning that, you know, as I was deconstructing from the architecture of a soul, I was also learning that it's not about having a contract. It's about, do I have permission to move? If we start moving from this energy of this is a simulated game, and to learn more about this, I would check out the Archetype video I did on the game maker. And I talk about the game maker. You know, we think of games as being ha, 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 happy, happy, happy. But really, the people who really like to create games are very technical. They're very scientific. And sometimes they can be a little bit more maniacal. They love playing games. They love it, okay? So sometimes the energy is not, I have a soul contract to not have this life. You know, I took on all these soul contracts, you know, because of past lives and all that sort of stuff. Or it's, I literally don't have permission to dream. I don't have permission to leave this state. I don't have permission to enter that country. And yeah, so it goes like that, okay? Once you start thinking, you got to start thinking about things as a game maker. You got to get into that psychology, and it ain't pretty. You know, it is really like, you know, they have a lot of like movies where they have these like rich people that like to play little games with people who don't have a lot of power, you know, and they like to put them in weird situations and stuff. This is like why we have so much human trafficking and stuff. It's because of this energy, okay? Do you have permission to move? Okay, and so if you start approaching it from that, that's a whole different conversation. So with that being said, you can start with removing soul contracts, okay? It will help you. You will have more freedom, but you will still be within the concept of the simulation. Okay, you will still be held to certain rules, okay? Once you start getting into a space where you want to create in a deeper sort of way, you'll want to transcend the soul contracts thing. So I'm not saying, because sometimes like I found that karma clearing has helped me. It's helped me move through energies. It's actually where I start. If you believe in karma, then you should clear it. But then you're going to get to a point where you're going to transcend karma, because you're going to see it more as a tool of suppression, and it's not rooted in justice. It's not rooted in fairness. It's going to be a program you want to transcend. Same thing. The soul could help you. So you might want to save your soul. But then you get to a point where you're like, wow, the soul has been utilized as an architecture to keep me complicit, or to keep me contained, or to keep me trapped. I need to move past that. So, and no, that can't just be done with one subliminal, but subliminals can help you. But at some point, I recommend transcending the architecture of the soul, becoming unnameable, knowing yourself at such a deep level that you don't have to name who you truly are, because whoever names you controls you, you know? So it's like I have a name in the simulation, but that's my avatar. You know, I have names, you know, I have an avatar name that I've chosen for this simulation, but that's not me. That's not, I am unnameable. You know, my avatar has a name, but my innermost self is completely unnameable, and it's not owned. Okay. Yes, so I addressed your question with soul contracts. Wow, y'all got a lot of questions. Okay, cool. Thank you. I'm glad that the subliminals have helped. I'm so glad. Okay. You said, so if I am ready to be bad, also not just good, then my code will change. Okay. Believe in your inner magic. You are in a polarity consciousness. These questions are within, a judgment of morality. So my question would be, who taught you what is good? Who taught you what is bad? Think about it. Who were those people? Those were your programmers. Not to say they didn't love you, not to say they don't care about you, not to say that they're bad or evil, but they were your programmers. So think about who taught you good, who taught you bad. Write it out. I would journal that out. Then I want you to think about them as individuals. Were they, quote, good? Were they, quote, bad? Like, most likely those were very, quote, flawed individuals, as we all are. So why do they get to tell you what's good or bad? Probably because they had certain root user capabilities within your world. Maybe they had more root permissions to be an authority over you, because that's how it works. It works through hierarchy. So you would want to deconstruct that first. That's how I would address that. And once you deconstruct that, then it's going to open your world up more. Just ask yourself those questions. Who taught me good? Who taught me bad? Who were those people? Those are your programmers. So you need to start deprogramming those things, and then you'll get to what the next phase of where you need to be. Okay. Yes. Okay. So Tarot by Lisette said, I might just shatter a mirror in my art. This compo is inspiring. Thank you. Yes. So when I first started learning about mirrors, it was when I was working with the ascension materials of aligning with Earth. And the way she describes it is mirror beads. We have these like mirror beads in our energetic field. And these mirrors, basically, they're like in our energy, which is true. But there's also mirrors like on the foundation of the earth. There's also like mirror dimensions and stuff. So it's actually bigger. But she opened up my perception. So I would go on Aligning with Earth and just type in mirrors and read everything that it says about mirrors, especially for people who are still in the light worker thing. And I'm not saying that that's good or bad. I'm just saying it's a phase, and start where you're at. But she has some good materials on it. But when I started learning about that, and she was teaching about the concept of mirrors and how they're utilized to project karma, so it's like, it's the karma, it's the narcissistic projection thing, right? The narcissist says, I am me, or what it says, I am you, you are me. This is narcissistic projection. They're going to project their stuff onto you, and they're going to take your identity. Okay. This is where we get into destiny swap sort of energy, or that single white female sort of energy where somebody wants to become you. They're like, they want to absorb your energy. They're using mirror magic. This is all through the realm of mirrors. Okay. But when I first started learning about this, and then I started muscle testing. So one way you can get information is through muscle testing to see what's true and what's not in your world. So I started counting. I said, I was asking, okay, do I have this many mirrors? It was like more. This many mirrors, more. This many mirrors, more. It was, when I got to the actual number of mirrors I was dealing with, it was shocking. And I was pissed. So what I did was I just went to like a dollar store. I got a mirror. I'm just going to give this, maybe this will be helpful to somebody. I got a mirror. I wrote down the number of mirrors that were in my field. And then I wrote like a decree on it. And I bought a hammer and I smashed it. And it just felt really good to do that. And it helped because right before then, I was going through this like weird paranoia kind of energy of like, oh my gosh, like everyone's out to get me, or like, why, poor me, why is this happening to me? And like, when I did that, I shattered that energy, and I was able to like, okay, so you know, it just helped me to get out of that like targeted individual frequency. When you're in the realm of mirrors and you feel like consumed by them, that's when you're in targeted individual energy. So yeah, I highly recommend that. It feels good. Sometimes you need to break some things. Just do it in a place that's safe. Sometimes you need to scream. Sometimes you need to hit something. You know, they have those rooms now, those rage rooms where you can just smash stuff. Like if you can do that, try that, you know. Definitely find a way to channel this aggression in a way that's healthy. But anger is important. Breaking things is good. You know, you don't always have to be, you know, love and light all the time. Sometimes you need to break something. Okay, let's see. Andrew, I appreciate you. Andrew is like breaking, and look at the comments of this, and Andrew is breaking down the concepts of the mirror realm. I can't uplift every comment, Andrew, but I'm uplifting some. But he did just want to say that, you know, he's excited to comment because a lot of times I don't have comments on. It's true, I don't, you know. Look, this is how I mastered the realm of mirror. I'm not, actually, let me stop. I haven't mastered anything. I'm a constant teacher and student. There is no full mastery. Okay, so I haven't mastered anything. But the way I was able to understand the realm of mirrors has a big thing to do with why I don't have comments on. It's not just because of trolls. There's, you know, compliments is a part of the realm of mirrors too. Because if you know, and social media has this interesting way of like training us to present our content for the eyes or of others, which are a lot of times mirrors of others, okay? And so what's happening sometimes, like through the comment section, we're seeing things through the mirrors of others. That's cool, but if you haven't had a deeper understanding of the realm of mirrors, what can happen is those mirrors can become portals, and you can bring yourself into someone else's portal that way. And people don't always know that they're doing it, you know. So, but that being said, I also know that comment sections are very helpful for people. I do kind of reserve that energy more for like Patreon and stuff, just because it's more manageable for me, you know. So you just do, you know, you get in where you fit in, you know. But yes, look at Andrew's stuff on mirrors. He's going in. Okay. Okay, somebody says there's a difference with looking at a mirror and looking in a mirror. Yes. Okay, so Tarot by Lisette says that some of my subs have gotten you out of some serious jams lately. Look, I know. I've been in some weird things, like some, and then been in another realm just like that, with the creation of a subliminal or with listening to something on repeat. Like I've seen it happen so many times. This is why, like, at the end of the day, it's about sound. We have to move into the realm of sound. This is Saturn. It's a very Saturnian energy. It creates your world. You want to become the conductor of your sound. Okay, and you'll start noticing all the ways that the world wants to conduct you through their sound. But yeah, there are these really interesting shifts that can happen with these subliminals. And this is why, like, I'm able to perceive into certain realms that other people are taking DMT to access. You don't have to. You can actually put on a certain subliminal and take yourself there, actually, you know. You could be stone cold sober while you're doing it, you know. Okay, so Andrew says, I avoid the neighbors that I never see bringing out their trash or bringing home groceries. Interesting. Oh, wow. I think there's something to that, because you don't see it unless you thinking about seeing them. Oh, yeah. I see that a lot, where it's like, now it's just normal, because now I'm like, okay, I'm in a simulation. Like, this is a game. Like, I don't take anything too seriously. So nothing is a conspiracy. It's just funny, you know. But sometimes there's people where it's like, and I don't have a regular schedule, so I do things irregularly. I don't have a set time I get home or a set time I do this or whatever. But it just so happens that there's a magnetic field that happens when I leave the door, another person leaves the door. It's just, it's funny. Now I'm just like, okay, this is just a part of it, you know. You got my book? Thank you, Rex 3000. Yes. So currently I have 3 books in rotation. One is published under another name, my old avatar, named Heather Archer. It's called The Grind Culture Detox. This is for if you are in a deep workaholism situation, if you feel like you're just being caught up in your work life. You're like a high achieving professional and you know you're supposed to be in leadership, but you don't like how you're in leadership. Get the Grind Culture Detox. That's how this whole thing started, was through that. And it's kind of like talking about the mechanization of our world through this process called grind culture. My second book, my other 2 books are published under my newest avatar, Heather Amunette. One is called The Archetype is Her. Yeah, this is when you get past what's going on in your energetic field and what's happening like with the grid system and all that sort of stuff and the architecture of your family dynamics and stuff. So that's a really good book to unpack that. And then the latest one is Beyond Your Birth Chart, which is basically getting into this concept of maybe I don't need to be defined by my birth chart. I know how they say that everything is so divinely conspired through the charting of the stars, but what if that's based upon a certain priesthood's interpretation of the stars? What if I'm a star, but I can chart my own path? What if I can create the architecture of the way I orbit? That's the third book. Okay. So those, because somebody asked which book. So I got The Grind Culture Detox, The Architect is Her, and Beyond the Birth Chart. Okay, so Rex 3000 asks, how do we transcend limited permissions? That's a good question. Check out my video on from soul contracts to root permissions, but I don't think I go fully into how. The best recommendation I can give you is, okay, so right now on Patreon, I have a genetic path cutter tier, okay? On the genetic path cutter tier, you have access to all of my toolkits that I've created so far, and I've created a bunch. I've created one on soul contracts. I've created 2 on etheric implants. I've created one on destiny swapping. I've created one on this concept of healing your relationship to money and maritime law. So I have like 5 toolkits on there. Plus I have 2 genetic path cutter decks. And this is how I learned about the concept of root permissions and the nature of the simulation, was through working these decks. I think I have 2 versions of the genetic path cutter deck on the genetic path cutter tier on Patreon. The best way to learn about what root permissions you don't have to certain things is to path work those decks. I am going to be releasing another deck on Black Diamond with the sacred leadership thing I'm doing next month. And that goes more specifically into it. I would need to advise, I don't have anything published to the public on this yet. It's in the works. But right now I'm working with people one-on-one. So I talk about this more in depth with my one-on-one folks that I work with, or, you know, on Black Diamond calls. But I don't have like a published thing. I even took off my genetic path cutter. I used to have the deck just for a one-time purchase. With the energies I was moving into it, I didn't feel comfortable having that. I wanted it in some kind of like either like a community that had other resources around it, or where I could do a reading with you and then show you the intricacies of working with the deck. I just needed something. That was the energy I was getting. So that's what I have for now. I'm not teaching this publicly yet. I'm not saying I won't, but I kind of want to work with people one-on-one with this as I'm workshopping these energies. So you can get clues though. If you look at my videos, and you could figure this out yourself. So you could do that. But if you want more specific things, I would either get a genetic path cutter reading or join Genetic Path Cutter on Patreon to get access to those toolkits and meditations and stuff, so you can have more insight on this. That would be the way I would say it, Rex 3000. Oh, interesting. So Rex 3000 says, I got the Beyond the Birth chart, was going to go with the Architect as her first, but I realized I need to transcend my astrology first. Interesting. That's so funny. I had the opposite experience. I couldn't even, I had been trying to transcend my birth chart, but I had to learn about the architecture of the simulation before I could, because it felt too big for me to do the, so it's interesting that you had the inverted experience, you know. So yeah, do what feels good for you. And it also depends on the placements. Like you most likely, right, have different placements than I do. So there could be certain root permissions that you needed to clear first before you could even get into the architecture of the simulation, you know. Okay, Andrew Johnson says, yep, most of us didn't even get to name our soul. Someone else decided that. There are certain tribes that allow their children to pick their names when they get old enough, I think. I know, I like that. I really do. I think that's like a much better option. Okay, you said, who's the author you referenced? A black guy who talks about crystals? I want to check out his book. A black guy? I don't know. I wasn't in this live. You must let me know if you're talking about something else I did. Because I don't, off top, I don't remember. Or I don't recall anyone. But yeah. Okay. Let's see. Tarot by Lisette says, I am learning both sides of the mask, dark and light. Yep, both sides of the mask, exactly. The spiritual warfare raged until I took my power back by disengaging and emanating. And I learned from those entities. Yes, everything is, okay. Think about this as you're going on your journey. Nothing is trash. Take an ecological approach. So people who take an ecological approach, they see treasure in the trash. They see value in the trash. They say, you know what? Not all of this needs to go to the dumpster. Actually, I can refine these materials and make them useful and make them beneficial in my life. I gave this example recently on a download I did on Patreon. I said, think about the people who go to Goodwill, these little cheap thrift stores, Goodwill, right? They go to Goodwill, they scour Goodwill. You know, where other people see trash or, oh, that's cheap, or, ew, I'm not going to Goodwill. I'm going to get my stuff from a new place. No, some people go to Goodwill and they find treasure there. And then some people even have the ingenuity to work on that and refine it. And then they sell it on Etsy for a whole bunch of money. And like, there's people who are making bank doing that. And it's because they're taking an ecological approach and they're not seeing things as trash or just because it's old or just because society says it's not, you know, worthy, that it's not worthy. They see behind the surface. They see behind the mirror, and then they're able to create wealth or opportunity from that. So the same thing can be said about any entity, you know, having mastery over that. If you're afraid of it, it's an aspect of you haven't integrated yourself. Okay, so everything has value. And if you're connecting to this collective unconscious, you are in everything. So if you're going to reject an entity, it's because you're rejecting a certain part of yourself, which is okay. It just means that, you know, there's a certain part that you haven't integrated. But if you take an ecological approach, you're composting things. You're not throwing things away. You're not saying, ew, it stinks, or ew, it's worn, it's torn. You know, maybe it's like, oh, okay, I might sew a hole in. I might sew this hole up, you know, or I might change the color of this. I might cut this in a certain way so it looks cute on me, you know. Take that approach with it and you'll have more fun. Okay, so you do muscle testing, tarot by Lisette. Oh, and you're Lisette, and you're using magnets. Yes, I haven't used the magnets yet in that way. Okay, yes, I shattered a real mirror. Somebody asked, did you use it? I mean, you could do it in your mind, or you could do like subliminals. But yeah, one time I had to take a hammer. I was like, no. It just helped me psychologically. Okay. Let's see. Where can I find the book for the astrology reading? So that is called Beyond the Birth Chart. It should be in my comments, not my comments. It should be in the description of this. You'll see it. Okay. Okay, so then somebody's asking, would I recommend reading the architect as her first or be on the birth chart, or does it not matter? It's your own way of doing things, you know. Whatever works for you, you'll know like what feels good. You know, does one book feel good over another? Like you'll know. So I really try to get away from the linear things. First do this, then do that. Like a lot of that I had to deprogram. You know, I was trained in academia, so I did that all day with people. You first got to read this, and then we can do that. And then like, I've been through that, and I had to unlearn that to see past a lot of the illusions and a lot of the mirrors of the simulation. So I wouldn't recommend a linear way of doing it, you know? Okay, let's see. Okay, so Andrew says, you don't need any of these system things they lead you to. You only need yourselves. I did it with none of the shamanic herbs and things like that. My mentor told me it would be better for me to do. You know, I actually really agree with that. Like, when I first got on like the spiritual path, I was like taking all the herbs. I was getting all the crystals. I was, you know, I had all the singing bowls and the gongs. I had everything. I had the whole setup. The yoga mats. I had all the certifications. I was doing all that. But the more I took out those things and I turned from within, so all of that stuff I was trying to like amass on the external, it was already inside of me. That's actually how, you know, I started my sound healing process as like a actual sound healer who would go out and, you know, people would hire me to like go and do shamanic healing ceremonies. And I had like a big old setup. I had like tons of singing bowls and all that kind of stuff. So I started sound healing very physical. But as I started going more and more internal, then I started creating subliminals. You know, I recorded a lot of singing, playing a lot of singing bowls, and then I would use those recordings and embed them with other frequencies and subliminals and all that kind of stuff. And I'll be honest, like I got a lot of great feedback with my in-person things, but I can impact more people with subliminals than I ever could doing like face-to-face in person, because only certain people would receive that. And there was also it was more expensive, you know, to get me to come out to you and all that stuff, and it was more expensive for me to bring all that stuff. The more and more I let go of those external things, the deeper I could go internally, and the more I could see past the realm of mirrors. And the same can be said for herbs. I stopped physically seeking out herbs. It's not to say I don't do that. It's not to say I don't use herbs, but I can tap into the frequency of any herb. I can tap into the scalar field of any herb. I don't need to physically have it on hand, you know? If you go at things from more of that 12th house collective unconscious energy, it's all right there. You don't need the material stuff to make it happen. So all of that other stuff, like all that ritualistic things, like, oh, you need to cast the circle, you need to wear this color, you need to do that. You can embody those frequencies from within. I would highly recommend against feeling like I need to get all these physical things, material things for my path, because that's just feeding into somebody's mirror system, you know, and you're still tied to, you know, the fiat currency and all that kind of stuff. That's why like a lot of besides the books, really, you know, most of my services are kind of more of like the sound frequencies, or, you know, even my toolkits are a mixture of words and sounds and meditations, because I really want to encourage people to open up the gates inside their minds. And the more it's a physical thing, the further away you get from that. So yeah, I totally agree with that. All right, y'all. So I'm going to close out. It's been a pleasure chatting with y'all. I'll go back and forth. You know, I get value from the comments. It's really great to hear what's working for you and the questions you have. It's really great. I can't always do it just because, you know, it depends on the frequency I'm in. It depends on what I'm initiating into. Sometimes I literally need to like close off to fully integrate or have understanding. But I also, I appreciate the comment. You know what I'm saying? So if you are looking for like a deeper kind of connection, then I would go through, you know, more of the online communities that I have right now. And I just do that because I kind of need a smaller bandwidth. I'm not supposed to be one of those people that has hundreds of comments that I'm reading through. That's not me, you know? And that's also like another thing. It's like, you got to know your role and be comfortable with it, you know? And a lot of times, you know, I had somebody ask the question recently. They sent me an email and they were like, wow, like I just connected with your content. And I have to say, like, I haven't seen anybody create content like you. Like, it's very different, you know? But they were like, but I have to ask, like, why do you keep your comments off? And I didn't fully describe, I mean, I had like a message that I sent her to where I kind of described this, but you know, the reason why my stuff is able to be different sometimes is because I can take my comments off. Like, I'm not getting the feedback of others, you know? I'm seeing what I'm seeing, I'm experiencing what I'm experiencing, and I'm creating, you know? And that's kind of what keeps things a little different, you know? So anyway, so I appreciate, y'all receiving me, and I do appreciate the questions. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I hope that y'all have a great rest of your day and chat with you soon. Okay. Bye.